Hi everyone, welcome back to Workshop, and this is part 2 of the restoration of my 76900 Midland CB radio base station. And I've taken off the case, desoldered the switch, and I think the first thing I'm going to look at is the mounting arrangement of this little soundboard here. I think I'll drill a couple of holes on the side of the case and mount it on the side. But first of all, I think I'll either have to remove those brackets because they're heavily corroded, or I will replace them. But we'll see what they look like when I get them off, and what they look like after a little bit of a rub with sandpaper. I'd removed the soundboard. I'd actually took the grinder brush onto the angle brackets here on there, and they cleaned up rather nicely, so I didn't need to replace them. I've mounted it on the side of the chassis here. I just need to drill one hole because there was already one there, and I've orientated it so the pots are up the way so that I can tweak them. And I've run the loom from the terminals there, the little solder terminals. I replaced the wiring, and they run along the inside of the chassis here with a cable saddle, sticky cable saddle where required, and then the two wires come out the side here, which will go on to the side of the case for the push button. I've also removed the transistor, the 2N3055. This is the wiring that went to here, so I've not replaced the transistor as such, but I did dig a bit deeper, and there was this fuse holder, if you remember, was on the PCB here, just sort of joining two parts of it together. So it turns out that I must have added this, and I know why. If I just turn the unit over, there was, I'll just zoom in here, so there was a PCB mounted fuse on the circuit board there, and obviously that had blown and I didn't have a replacement, so that's why I'd shoved that fuse holder on the underside of the PCB. So again, I still don't have one, but I think this is a much neater solution I've got here. It's still a replaceable fuse holder, but a much smaller one, and I've soldered it down through the holes on the PCB, therefore it's not making a bit of an eyesore on the underside of the circuit board here. So now the next thing I've got to do is actually replace the transistor. I think I'm going to mount it on its original heatsink. I've got a replacement transistor. One of the good fellows in the comments of the last video suggested a compatible that's better suited for this power supply than the 2N3055 that I'd put in. The base current on the 2N3055 is quite high given its gain that it's got, so therefore I might put a bit of stress on the circuit there. So we've got a replacement transistor that I can actually go ahead and fit, and it is a D44H11. It's got the same pinout as the original transistor, so I can fit it where it needs to go. Now, some of the pads on the PCB are actually ripped off. It's maybe one of the reasons I'd gone ahead and stuck in a 2N3055. The way the transistor's mounted, it's obviously mounted on the other side, but it's not through three holes on the PCB. There's a slotted hole. If I just zoom in, there's a slotted hole there, and the three legs of the transistor come through that hole and bend over onto three pads on the PCB. A little bit of an odd way of doing it, but that's the way they chose to do it, and that's obviously how I'm going to have to retrofit it. The pad for one of the pins is broken, so I will need to do a little bit of work there to make it fit in. This is just a 12 volt power supply, I believe, because this Midland can run off a car battery, which is obviously going to be around about your 13.8 volts, so it's going to produce a single rail supply from the 240 volt mains. So I'll go ahead and fit the transistor now, and I'll come back. And there's a transistor installed. Had to use an insulating kit because this heatsink's grounded, and the tab and the transistor's collector, so obviously not wanting that to short out. So that's all intact. And if I just turn it over, you can see what I've sort of done on the PCB. If I just zoom in a little bit more, You can see that I've just put the 3 legs of the transistor through the hole and bent the legs over onto the relevant tabs in the PCB. Like I said, one of the pads in the PCB is actually gone, but there was enough length in the leg of the transistor to get the next solder joint along, so that was fine there. So I've unsoldered the wire that goes to the DC out here on the power supply. There's 2 terminals here, solder terminals on the PCB. One of them is obviously ground and the other one is a plus 12 volt output, so I've disconnected that. This other wire here doesn't go anywhere, that actually just goes to one side of the switch, which I haven't soldered in yet, so that doesn't matter. And so I'm going to power up and make sure I've still got 12 volts on that terminal there. Okay, so here we go for a power up. I've got the multimeter hooked up and I'm on the output terminal, so we'll just power it up, see what we've got. 12.5 volts. That'll do perfectly. Right, the next thing that needs fixed is the LED display in the front. If you remember, one of the segments was out, so luckily it looks like, if I just zoom in a bit, it's fairly easy to get to remove the board. Just a couple of Phillips screws there and flexate down onto this board here, which is on the back of the actual rotary selector switch itself. So I'll disassemble that and we'll have a look and see what we can find with that missing LED. So here we are looking down into the top of the LED display, which I've just removed a couple of screws and pulled it back off the front panel, and you can see I've dialed up channel 40 on the transceiver and you can see the segment missing just there. However, it is intermittent. There we go, did you see that? We've got a dodgy joint. Now this is just like a dual inline LED module, so I'm hoping I can just resolder the pins and it'll start working again. Of course it could be further down onto the flex, it could be anywhere, but not really too sure. I think it might be the flex. I'm just pulling the board there at the flex there and you can see it going off and on as I pull it back and forward. Yeah, looks like we've got a bad joint on the flex, so I'll go over some of the joints, which you can see them down there. I'll go over them and see what I can find. Okay, what I've done, I've resoldered the joints on the flex at the bottom there. Hopefully you can see that that's that grey part there, and that's that rows of pins on the display there, and then the rows of pins on the switch PCB there. So I've gone ahead and resoldered all of them. They looked okay actually, but I did that anyway. And I've powered it up again and it's still intermittent when I move this around. So I think what we've got is actually a broken flex. Possibly the wire inside the plastic usually breaks right at the ends where it appears out of the plastic, and you'll have a wire there, it just detaches and it's just touching inside the flex itself, or just as it comes out there. So I think I've isolated which pin it is, because looking at the data sheet, it's not the specific data sheet for this LED display. This is a front view here, and this is the segment that's out. So it's digit 1, that's digit 2, and it's A, B, C, D, E, F. So it's digit 2, F. That's F2. That's that one there. That's that pin there that's dodgy. And if you follow that pin, the track coming off of that pin round, it comes down into the second pin from the right hand side of the flex itself. And if I go along with my meter, it's basically all 0 ohms until I come to that one there. So I've verified that's definitely one. This one's open circuit, and normally, I mean, if I wiggle it I can get it to connect, but it's normally sitting open circuit. So we've definitely got a damaged flex there. Now I don't think I'm going to remove the flex and put in a new one. What I think I'll do is I'll just put a jumper between there and there, a nice loose fitting single wire just to join that two together. Bit of a hack, but given this thing's, you know, over 35 years old and look at the state of the wiring, it'll be okay. So I'm just going to solder a wire in across there, and we should be good after that. So let me go and do that now. So I've just made up this little bit of 702 wire, grey colour. That'll make, you know, it should hide it pretty well. So I'll just go and solder that in now. Okay, there's the grey wire installed there. A little bit hard to get to, what with all this lumen place in front of it, but I managed to get in there. So now we'll power it up and we'll wiggle the board about, and we'll see if we fix the problem. Right, the board's still loose. I've not put the screws back in because I want to wiggle it about, so you can see me wiggling it there, and it looks like the problem's fixed. I'm not getting any more dropout on that segment, so I think we're good to go on that. The problem with those flat flexes is they don't use a multi-cord cable, most of them. They're just like a single strand, and you know, they break pretty easily. They don't take much bending back and forward before they break, so it was maybe a little bit weak in the first place, and that anyway looks to have fixed it. So I'll screw it back together and we're good to go forward. Right, I think we're ready for a test. I've hooked up an antenna sitting outside the workshop, a little mag mount sitting in a piece of steel, probably not big enough, but I think it's good enough for the job. The closest I get the SWR to be perfect is about 2, which isn't great at all, but it's good enough for my test, honestly. So we'll give this a bash. I'll just check the SWR again. I'll just hit set there, and yeah, it's just over 2 there, and I have got an inline SWR meter as well, just to check and make sure it was the same, and it is. Power meter showing about, pushing out about 5 watts. It's supposed to be a 4 watt system, but it's pushing out about 5 watts, but that's okay, that's looking good, and I think we're ready for a test. So let me just, might get a bit noisy here. Now, the problem is there's probably no one to talk to because there isn't that much people using CB radios these days. So I actually went ahead, if I just pan you around, I have hooked up the Superstar 2000. It's upside down at the moment because I've got the case open just so I could wire up 12 volts to it, to a power supply in the workbench there. Because I didn't know what polarity it was at the back. It wasn't marked, so I just thought, well, I'll not take no chances. So I've got it hooked up. It is actually working. There we go, and I've dialed up a frequency that matches about channel 30 on the 76900, which works out about channel 39 on the Superstar 2000 on band D. Is about as close as I get it, but you can tune it in using this fine coarse adjustment here. And I've got no antenna for this. I've got the dummy load plugged into the back here because I'm just going to be receiving with it, and we'll give it a little test. So probably I get a little bit of feedback, but I'll just try it now. This is a test. 1 2 1 2 1 4 for a copy, over. And as you can see, that's sort of working, and I have actually gone ahead and done exactly the reverse. I put the antenna into the Superstar 2000, the dummy load into the Midland, and I'm getting about the same sort of audio on the other way. It's not that clear. It really is because I've got the speaker there. It's all just not ideal, to say the least. So the other thing I was obviously curious of, what was the little board? Was it the Close Encounters 5 tones? Well, actually it wasn't. So I'll just get that going now. You should hear it through the Superstar 2000. Wasn't exactly Close Encounters 5 tones that I remember. It's just a noise. And obviously the 2 controls on the board inside the Midland are just for adjusting the speed and the frequency of that tone that you heard. So I'm going to leave it in because it was part of my 80s, so I'm just going to leave it. I don't know what CB radio I had the Close Encounters 5 tones, but this is what I'm getting with this one anyway. Yeah. So the other thing I have actually tried, I have actually gone on to channel 19 and tried to get somebody. I've shouted for a radio check and I'm just getting nothing. I think I need a better antenna outside, because the one I've got, little mag mount, is only about 10 inches high. It's just a cheap antenna, so God knows what sort of range I'm getting. Hi Tracy, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear.
Hi Tracy, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear.
Right, I think we're ready to put this thing back together again. I have gone ahead and added a heatsink to the original heatsink here, just to beef it up a little bit, just for peace of mind, because it was getting warm and it is a little bit cooler now that I've got this heatsink that I just found lying around in stock. So that's that fitted there, and I think we'll go ahead and put the case on. And here's the case, all nicely, freshly painted. I just used some black hammerite, and not the smooth stuff, the rough stuff or whatever they call it. So it's come out really, really nice, especially around the rounded edges. I think it looks great. And I'll put a little bit on the inside as well, just where I'd that scrape marks here, where I'd been scraping it all those years ago when I was deburring the hole. And I've also gone ahead and done the base plate as well. There's the side that's going to go to the outside, and the new inside covering all that bad marks and corrosion that was on there. So I'll go ahead and fit these to the unit now, and I'll come back. 1-9 for a quick radio check. Anyone got their ears on for a quick radio check? Over. 1-9 for a quick radio check. Anyone got their ears on for a quick radio check? Over. Well, there it is. The 76900 is complete. So I'll persevere a little bit, see if I can try and get anyone online, but with that little antenna I don't think I'm going to get anywhere. So I have ordered a new antenna that will go on the roof of the workshop, because yeah, I'm going to play about with this thing, see if I can resurrect some memories of the 80s. So thanks for watching.